A poor guy with nothing but coins in his pocket chose to save a collapsing old lady on a crowded city street, but he didn't realize the woman he lifted from the ground was a hidden billionaire, and that one quiet act would lead him straight into the path of her powerful, untouchable beauty CEO daughter, who would later propose to him. He missed the job that could have saved his life just to help her, but by the next morning, security doors that never opened for ordinary people were opening for him without question. The old lady he thought was weak watched him with eyes that were anything but helpless, but why did she seem more interested in his choices than his words? And her daughter, the CEO who built her empire on control, who never trusted anyone, who never needed anyone, but why did she keep watching him like he was the only problem she couldn't solve? How does a poor man become the center of a billionaire's world? What did the old lady see in him that no one else ever did? And what could make a woman who rejects everyone choose to kneel and propose to him instead? Daniel Reeves had exactly 2,300 Nigerian nairas left in his wallet, the last of it. Enough for transport to an interview that could finally pull him out of the life that had been quietly closing in on him. The city surged around him, cars honking, heels clicking, voices overlapping in a rhythm that never waited for anyone. Daniel checked the time. "Not today, please not today," he muttered under his breath, quickening his pace. His jacket was worn at the edges, but clean. His shoes old, but carefully polished. He carried himself with a quiet discipline that didn't match his circumstances. He noticed everything. A cyclist swerving too close. A loose pavement tire someone almost tripped on. A vendor struggling with a broken cartwheel. He slowed instinctively, then forced himself forward. "Focus, Daniel. Just this once, focus." But that instinct, to fix, to help, had never really left him. Years earlier, in a lecture hall, that now felt like someone else's life, a professor had once said, "You don't just see problems, you see how the world should be." That word didn't wait for him. When his mother fell ill, hospital bills stacked faster than hope. Daniel dropped out without ceremony. No farewell. No return. By the time she passed, the system he trusted had already moved on without him. Now, all he had left was this interview. A second chance. He tightened his grip on the envelope and stepped into the busiest stretch of the street. Then something shifted. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just wrong. A ripple in movement. People adjusting their path slightly, avoiding something without stopping. Daniel's eyes followed it. And found her. An old lady, standing near the curb, her hand trembling slightly as if reaching for balance that wasn't there. For a brief second, their eyes met. Hers were not empty. They were searching. Then, she collapsed. A man in a tailored suit glanced down, irritation flickering across his face. "Someone should handle that," he said into his phone, and kept walking. A woman slowed, hesitated, then whispered, "Oh dear," before disappearing into the crowd. The city didn't stop. It flowed around her. Daniel didn't move at first. His eyes flicked to his watch. Then back to her. Then ahead, to the road that led to everything he needed. "If I go now, I can still make it," he whispered. Not confusion. Not weakness. Recognition. "You stayed," she said faintly. Daniel gave a small shrug. Didn't feel right to leave. A taxi slowed when Daniel waved. "Hospital?" the driver asked. "Yes." "Pay first." Daniel paused. He looked at his wallet. Then back at her. Without a word, he handed over everything he had left. As the driver helped her into the car, Daniel stepped back. Relief settled in, quiet, steady. "Wait," the old lady said. Her voice was stronger now. Too steady. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small card. Plain. No name. No logo. Just an address. "Come tomorrow," she said, placing it in his hand. Daniel frowned slightly. "It's okay, Ma. You don't need to." "Come," she repeated. This time, it wasn't a request. The taxi door closed. The car pulled away. Daniel stood there, staring at the card. Then at the empty road. Then at his watch. The interview. Gone. He let out a quiet breath and slipped the card into his pocket. Yeah, right, he murmured, shaking his head. Then he turned and began the long walk home. But high above the street, behind tinted glass in a silent black car that had been parked long before the fall, a man lowered his phone. She made contact, he said, and inside that moving taxi, the old lady sat upright. Her posture no longer fragile. Her gaze sharp. Deliberate. Interesting, she murmured. The test had begun long before Daniel noticed her. And for the first time in a very long time, someone had passed. Daniel didn't sleep well that night. Not because of hunger, he was used to that. But because of the card. It sat on the small wooden table beside his bed, catching his attention every time he tried to ignore it. Plain. Unbranded. Just an address. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling fan as it clicked in uneven rhythm. Come tomorrow. The old woman's voice echoed in his mind. Not weak. Not grateful. Certain. Daniel turned his head slightly and looked at the card again. Probably just someone trying to say thank you, he muttered. But something didn't sit right. He replayed the moment in his head. The way her eyes had changed. The way her voice steadied too quickly. The way she looked at him, not like someone who had just been helped, but like someone who had just confirmed something. Daniel sat up slowly. That wasn't normal, he said quietly. Across the room, a small metal shelf held a few belongings. Tools. Old textbooks. A carefully folded document. He walked over and picked it up. His unfinished engineering admission. A future post in ink. Flashback. Hospital corridors. Bills piling up. His mother's weak smile. You'll go back someday, she had whispered. Daniel never answered. Because deep down, he didn't believe it. Back in the present, he placed the paper down and looked at the card again. Tomorrow, he said under his breath. Morning came faster than expected. The city was louder today. Or maybe Daniel just noticed it more. He stood outside the address on the card. And froze. A towering glass building stretched into the sky. Clean. Polished. Untouchable. The kind of place people like him didn't enter. They walked past. Daniel took a step back. Checked the address again. Same. No, this can't be right, he said. Two men in suits exited the building, speaking in low tones. One of them glanced briefly at Daniel. Then looked again. This time, longer. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Maybe I should just leave, he murmured. He turned slightly. Then stopped. If I walk away now. He exhaled slowly. I'll never know. He straightened his jacket. Ran a hand through his hair. And stepped forward. Inside, the air felt different. Cooler. Quieter. Controlled. The receptionist looked up. Her expression changed instantly. Good morning, she said, standing. Are you Daniel Reeves? Daniel blinked. Yes. She smiled, not politely. Knowingly. They've been expecting you. Daniel's stomach tightened. Who is they? He asked cautiously. But instead of answering, she gestured toward a private elevator. Please, she said. As the elevator doors opened, Daniel hesitated for just a second. Then stepped inside. The doors closed behind him with a soft, final sound. And as the elevator began to rise, Daniel realized something that made his chest tighten slightly. This wasn't a thank you visit. He just didn't know yet what it really was. The elevator rose in complete silence, smooth and uninterrupted, as if it had been waiting for him long before he arrived. Daniel stood still, hands loosely at his sides, trying not to look as out of place as he felt. The mirrored walls reflected him from every angle, his worn jacket, his tired eyes, the quiet uncertainty he couldn't hide. He shifted slightly. "This is wrong," he murmured under his breath. "There's no way this is for me." But the elevator didn't stop. It climbed higher and higher until it finally slowed and opened. The floor he stepped into didn't look like an office. It looked like power. White glass panels revealed the entire city beneath, stretching endlessly in every direction. The furniture was minimal, expensive, intentional. Every detail whispered control. Two men in dark suits stood near the entrance, watching him. Not suspicious. Expectant. "Mr. Reeves," one of them said calmly, gesturing forward. "This way." Daniel hesitated, but followed. Each step felt heavier than the last. They stopped in front of a large door. One of the men opened it. "Please go in." Daniel stepped inside. The room was quiet. Too quiet. At the far end, near a long window overlooking the city, someone stood with their back turned. Still. Composed. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Something about the posture felt familiar. "Close the door," the woman said. Her voice, steady. Clear. Nothing like yesterday. Daniel slowly pushed the door shut behind him. A soft click echoed. The woman turned. And in that moment, everything shifted. The fragile, trembling old lady from the street was gone. In her place stood a woman with presence, sharp, controlled, unshaken by time or circumstance. Her posture was straight. Her gaze unwavering. Her weakness, completely gone. Daniel blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. "You," he said, almost unsure. She studied him carefully, her eyes scanning his reaction, measuring it. "Yes," she replied calmly. "Me." Silence filled the room for a second longer than comfortable. "You don't look surprised enough," she added. Daniel let out a small breath, shaking his head slightly. "I'm trying to understand what's happening first." A faint smile touched her lips, not warm, but approving. "Good," she said. "That means you think before you react." She walked slowly toward him, each step deliberate. Controlled. "My name is Evelyn Carrington." The name landed. Heavy. Familiar. Daniel's expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. Evelyn Carrington. A name tied to headlines, industries, power. A woman rarely seen, but always felt. He swallowed slightly. "I've heard of you." "I would assume so," she replied. She moved past him, then turned again, studying him from a different angle, as if confirming something she already suspected. "You gave up your last money yesterday," she said. It wasn't a question. Daniel nodded once. "You needed help." "And your interview?" she asked. A small pause. "Then, I missed it." Evelyn watched him closely. Waiting. No complaint came. No regret. Just quiet acceptance. Something in her eyes shifted. "For years," she said slowly, "I have built everything I own by understanding people." She moved closer again. "Not what they say, but what they do when no one is rewarding them." Daniel frowned slightly. "So, yesterday was a test." "A simple one," she replied. "But not an easy one." Long before this moment, Evelyn had learned that wealth attracted masks. Business partners who smiled while calculating betrayal. Friends who stayed only while benefits lasted. A man she once planned to marry, who disappeared the moment her first company collapsed, taking what little she had left with him. She rebuilt everything from nothing. But she never trusted easily again. Instead, she watched. Tested. Waited. Back in the present, her voice softened, just slightly. "Most people only show kindness when it costs them nothing." She held his gaze. "You did the opposite." Daniel shifted his weight slightly. I didn't think about it that way. I know, she said. That's why you're here. A quiet tension filled the space. Why bring me here? Daniel asked. Evelyn turned toward the window, looking out over the city she controlled in ways most people never understood. Because people like you are rare, she said. Then she looked back at him. And rare things are either overlooked or valued. She walked to her desk and pressed a button. Send her in, she said. Daniel's brow furrowed slightly. Send who? The door behind him opened. And the air in the room changed again. The sound of heels against polished floor echoed softly. Precise. Confident. Unhurried. Daniel turned. And saw her. She wasn't just beautiful. She was composed in a way that made everything around her feel less significant. Sharp eyes. Controlled expression. Presence that didn't ask for attention, but commanded it anyway. Evelyn spoke calmly. My daughter. A brief pause. Adriana Vale. Adriana's gaze landed on Daniel. Cold. Assessing. Unimpressed. And in that single look, Daniel understood something immediately. Whatever this was, it had just become far more complicated. Adriana didn't speak immediately. She stood a few steps inside the room, her gaze fixed on Daniel as if she were reading something written beneath his skin. Not curiosity. Not interest. Evaluation. Evelyn moved back toward her desk, calm and observant, leaving the space between them open deliberately. This is the one? Adriana asked, her voice low and controlled. Yes, Evelyn replied. A brief silence followed. Adriana stepped closer, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. She circled him once, not rudely, but thoroughly, taking in everything, his posture, his clothes, the way he held himself without trying to appear smaller than he was. No experience in corporate strategy, she said. No formal degree completed. No references that matter in this building. Her eyes lifted to his. And yet, you're here. Daniel met her gaze. I didn't ask to be. A faint shift, almost invisible, passed through her expression. Evelyn watched from behind, saying nothing. Adriana turned slightly. You missed an interview yesterday. Yes. For a stranger. Daniel didn't hesitate. She needed help. Adriana's jaw tightened just slightly, but not from disagreement, more like resistance to something she didn't want to acknowledge. You understand this company operates on precision, she continued. Timing, decisions, accountability. One wrong move cost millions. Daniel nodded. I understand responsibility. She studied him for a second longer than necessary. Then she walked past him toward the desk, picking up a tablet. Let's test that, she said. What followed wasn't a formal interview. It was pressure. Adriana handed him a file. Dense. Complex. Numbers, projections, logistics. You have 30 minutes, she said. Find what's wrong. Daniel took the tablet slowly. His eyes scanned the data, not rushing, not panicking. Adriana leaned back slightly against the desk, arms folded. You won't, she added. He didn't respond. Time passed quietly. The room remained still except for the faint movement of Daniel's eyes across the screen. He didn't skim. He studied. Years ago, Daniel had learned not just to solve problems, but to notice patterns others overlooked. While others chased big answers, he focused on small inconsistencies. Because that's where real problems hid. After a while, Daniel lifted his head. The supply chain projection, he said. Adriana's eyes narrowed slightly. What about it? It assumes consistent delivery timing, he replied. But there's a delay factor here, and it compounds. He tapped lightly on the screen. It looks small at first, he continued, but over time, it creates a loss you wouldn't notice immediately, until it's too late. Silence. Adriana walked forward, taking the tablet from him. She scanned it quickly. Then slower. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward her daughter, not missing the shift. Adriana set the tablet down carefully. That's a theoretical issue, she said. Daniel shook his head slightly. No. It's already happening. That made her pause. You're basing that on what? She asked. Daniel hesitated briefly, not from doubt, but from habit. He wasn't used to being asked to explain himself in rooms like this. Patterns, he said simply. An experience. Adriana studied him again. This time, differently. Years earlier, a man had stood in a room like this, confident, impressive, convincing. She trusted his analysis. He was wrong. Not by accident, but by design. It nearly destroyed everything she had built. Since then, she stopped trusting instincts that couldn't be verified. Back in the present, she crossed her arms again. You're either very observant, she said slowly, or very lucky. Daniel gave a small, quiet shrug. I fix things, he replied. That answer lingered in the air longer than expected. Evelyn finally spoke. Give him something real, she said. Adriana glanced at her mother, then back at Daniel. Something unspoken passed between them. She turned and walked toward the door. Come with me. Daniel blinked slightly. Where? Adriana didn't look back. If you're going to stay here, she said, you need to prove that wasn't luck. Daniel followed. As the door closed behind them, Evelyn remained where she was. Watching. Not just Daniel. But Adriana. Because this test was never only about him. Adriana straightened slightly. That detail mattered. More than she wanted to admit. She tapped her tablet quickly, pulling internal audit logs. Her expression changed subtly as she scanned. Daniel didn't speak. He waited. Years earlier, she had learned the cost of missing small inconsistencies. A minor delay in reporting had once allowed internal fraud to grow unnoticed for months. By the time she discovered it, the damage wasn't just financial, it was personal. People she trusted had been involved. Since then, she built systems designed to detect everything. But even systems had blind spots. Human ones. Back in the present, Adriana exhaled slowly. You shouldn't be able to see that, she said. Daniel shrugged slightly. I wasn't looking for permission. That answer lingered. Not defiance. Just truth. She turned off the screen. Then looked at him properly for the first time, not as a test subject, but as something harder to categorize. You understand what this means? She asked. Daniel nodded once. Someone inside is manipulating it. Yes. And you don't know who? He added. A slight pause. No, she admitted. That silence changed the air again. Because uncertainty inside her company wasn't supposed to exist. Adriana turned slightly. Then we go deeper. Daniel frowned slightly. Deeper into what? She looked at him directly now. The real system. They moved again. Downward this time. Past controlled floors. Past restricted access. Into a section of the building Daniel never even knew existed. The environment shifted again. This time quieter. Heavier. Screens lined the walls, displaying real-time operational flow across multiple cities. Daniel stopped briefly. This is national-level coordination, he said quietly. Adriana nodded. Global. Daniel looked at her. Why am I seeing this? She turned slightly. Because if you can understand what's broken here, she said, you might understand why I needed someone like you. A brief silence followed. Daniel asked, someone like me, why? Adriana didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer to one of the screens and pointed at a long, branching system map. Every decision here affects thousands of people, she said. And most of the people making those decisions have never once faced the consequences personally. She turned back to him. You have. that landed differently. Not as praise. As recognition. Daniel didn't respond right away. Because she was right. Every mistake, every delay, every hardship, he had lived the consequences of systems that failed people like him. Adriana watched his silence carefully. Then spoke again. This company doesn't need more experts, she said. It needs someone who understands what failure feels like. For the first time, Daniel's expression shifted slightly. Not pride. Not confusion. Something quieter. More grounded. I'm not here to be part of a company, he said. Adriana tilted her head slightly. Then why are you here? Daniel looked at the screens again. Then back at her. Because you brought me in. A long pause followed. Not tension. Understanding forming slowly. Adriana turned away slightly, as if recalibrating her thoughts. Then stay useful, she said finally. And began walking again. Daniel followed. Not fully aware yet. That what she was really building wasn't just a test. It was a path. And he was already halfway inside it. Adriana didn't slow down as they moved deeper into the restricted section of the building. The air felt tighter here, as if even the walls understood they were not meant for casual conversation. Daniel followed a few steps behind, still processing what he had just seen, the scale of the system, the hidden complexity beneath what the public believed was just another corporate empire. You're quiet, Adriana said without looking back. I'm thinking, Daniel replied. That's usually where mistakes begin, she said. He gave a faint, almost amused exhale. Or where they are prevented. That made her pause for half a second, but she kept walking. They entered a control room lined with live data screens. Unlike the upper floors, this one had no luxury feel, only function. People worked silently at stations, tracking movements, logistics, and financial flows across multiple regions. Adriana gestured toward a central monitor. We traced the anomaly further. It's not just one route anymore. Daniel stepped closer. His eyes scanned the shifting patterns. It's spreading, he said quietly. Yes, she replied. A technician nearby glanced at Daniel briefly, confused at his presence, but said nothing. In this room, questioning Adriana's decisions wasn't an option. Daniel pointed slightly. This segment here, it's being rerouted before it even reaches distribution logs. Adriana folded her arms. Meaning? Someone isn't just hiding errors, Daniel said. They're rewriting what counts as an error. A subtle silence followed. That distinction mattered. Adriana remembered why she built this system in the first place. Not just efficiency, but control. Years ago, during her early leadership transition, a senior board member manipulated reporting structures. It didn't just cost money, it cost trust. She had to remove half her advisory team afterward. Since then, she built layers upon layers of verification. And yet, someone still found a gap. I've seen patterns like this before, he said. Not at this scale, but the logic is the same. If you want to hide something big, you don't hide it all at once. You spread it out until it looks normal. Adriana studied him more carefully now. Not skepticism. Reassessment. Where did you learn that? She asked. Daniel hesitated briefly. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because the memory attached to it wasn't comfortable. I used to work with systems that broke easily, he said. When you don't have money, you learn how things fail faster than how they succeed. That line carried weight she didn't expect. A short silence followed. Then Adriana stepped forward and accessed a deeper layer of the system. This level isn't even visible to most department heads, she said. If you're right, whoever is doing this has internal clearance. Daniel leaned slightly closer, focusing. Then it's not an outsider, he said. No, she replied. It's someone trusted. That changed the atmosphere. A technician nearby stiffened slightly, clearly hearing the implication but pretending not to. Adriana noticed everything. So did Daniel. She turned off the screen and faced him fully now. You keep identifying problems, she said. But I want to know something else. Daniel met her gaze. What? Why do you notice what others don't? That question hung in the air longer than anything else she had asked him so far. Daniel remembered sitting beside his mother in a crowded clinic years ago. Systems failing quietly around them. Delays that no one explained. Forms misplaced. Procedures ignored. He had been young, but not blind. He saw how small inefficiencies became real consequences. People didn't always die from illness. Sometimes they died from delays. From neglect. From systems that forgot they were dealing with humans. Back in the present, he answered simply. Because I've lived inside systems that don't care when they break. Adriana's expression shifted slightly, not soft, but focused. That answer aligned with something she understood more than she expected. She turned and began walking again. Then you understand why this matters. Daniel followed. Yes. They reached a sealed access corridor. 2 guards stood at the entrance. They opened the door immediately when Adriana approached. Inside was quieter again. More private. More controlled. As they walked, Adriana finally spoke without looking back. If you're wrong, she said, you'll disrupt one of the most sensitive operations in this company. Daniel replied without hesitation. Then don't let me be wrong. That made her stop briefly. Not because of defiance. Because of certainty. She turned her head slightly. Confidence is easy. Accuracy is expensive. Daniel nodded. So is ignoring a problem until it grows. That line landed differently. Because it wasn't theory. It was experience. They reached the final door at the end of the corridor. Adriana placed her hand on the scanner. Before opening it, she looked at him. This next level will confirm everything you think you've seen, she said. Daniel met her gaze. Or prove me wrong. A pause. Either way, he added, you know the truth. The door unlocked. And they stepped inside. The door slid open with a quiet mechanical sigh, and the air inside the room felt different immediately, denser, colder, almost as if the space itself was designed to discourage hesitation. Daniel stepped in behind Adriana. This wasn't just another control room. It was deeper, more secure, and far more isolated than anything he had seen so far. The screens here didn't show summaries or regional reports, they showed raw, unfiltered system flows. Real-time movement of goods, money, and data across multiple cities. Adriana didn't speak at first. She walked slowly toward the center console and placed her hand on it, unlocking a deeper layer of access. Daniel observed quietly. Something about the way she moved here was different, less CEO, more strategist. Like someone who had been carrying weight alone for a long time. Look, she said finally. The main display expanded. What appeared wasn't just irregular. It was coordinated. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. This isn't random. No, Adriana replied. It never was. She zoomed into a cluster of transactions. This pattern repeats across 3 regions. Same timing. Same structure. Slight adjustments each time. Daniel stepped closer. It's structured imitation. Adriana glanced at him. Explain. Whoever is doing this, he said slowly, knows your system well enough to mimic normal behavior. But not perfectly. They are copying efficiency patterns, not understanding them. That distinction mattered. Because copying kept you hidden. Understanding made you invisible. A technician at a nearby station finally spoke up, hesitant. We flagged it last week, but it didn't meet escalation thresholds. Adriana turned slightly. Why not? It looked like standard operational fluctuation. Daniel shook his head slightly. That's exactly how it stays hidden. The technician fell silent. Adriana crossed her arms, staring at the screen. For the first time, something unreadable passed through her expression. Not confusion, but recalibration. This means someone inside the network is either feeding false structure, she said, or altering data before it reaches verification. Daniel nodded. Or both. She remembered a board meeting years ago when a similar pattern had appeared in a smaller subsidiary. Back then, she dismissed it as noise. 2 months later, they discovered internal sabotage that cost millions and nearly collapsed investor trust. Since then, she built safeguards for everything. But systems weren't just technical. They were human. And humans adapted. Back in the present, she exhaled slowly. You were right to insist this wasn't a glitch, she said. Daniel didn't respond with pride. It usually isn't. That calmness unsettled her more than excitement would have. She turned to one of the live feeds and highlighted a distribution node. This is where it begins, she said. Daniel studied it carefully. No. Adriana looked at him. It doesn't begin here, he corrected. It just surfaces here. A pause. Then where does it start? She asked. Daniel traced the flow backward mentally, following invisible logic. Here, he said, pointing to an upstream coordination layer. But even that's not the origin. Adriana narrowed her eyes. Keep going. Daniel hesitated for the first time, not from uncertainty, but from realization. This is being shaped before it enters your system, he said slowly. Externally coordinated, then internally adjusted. That changed everything. Because it meant the system wasn't just compromised. It was being influenced. Adriana stepped back slightly. For someone who controlled billions in structured flow, uncertainty was rare. Unacceptable. But now it was present. A long silence filled the room. Then she spoke quietly. If this is true, she said, then someone has been studying my infrastructure long before I noticed. Daniel nodded once. Yes. And you found it in less than a day, she added. Yes. She turned toward him fully now. Not evaluating anymore. Observing. You shouldn't be able to do that, she said. Daniel gave a small shrug. I wasn't trying to. That answer landed differently again. Because effort implied ambition. And Daniel didn't seem ambitious. Just observant. Adriana walked a few steps away, processing everything. Then stopped. Without turning back, she said, my mother didn't bring you here by accident. Daniel looked at her. She never does anything without reason, Adriana continued. Everything is a test, or a calculation. She turned slightly. And right now. I don't know which one you are. That statement hung in the air. Not hostile. Not warm. Just honest. Daniel replied quietly, I'm not here to be either. Adriana studied him for a long moment. Then looked back at the screen. This system is now compromised at a level I cannot ignore, she said. A pause. And you are the only one who saw it without being told where to look. She turned fully toward him. So I want to know something, she said. Daniel met her gaze. Why should I trust that you're not connected to it? The room went still. Not tense. Focused. Daniel didn't react immediately. He simply nodded slightly, as if the question made sense. Don't, he said. Adriana blinked once. Don't trust me, he added. Verify me. That answer was not defensive. It was practical. For the first time, Adriana's expression shifted slightly, something between surprise and reconsideration. Because people usually demanded trust. Daniel offered accountability. She turned off the main display. The next step, she said, isn't here. Daniel asked, where then? Adriana looked at him directly. At the source. And this time, when she walked out, Daniel followed without hesitation. Not because he understood everything yet. But because for the first time, he was no longer being tested randomly. He was being pulled into something real. They left the deepest level of the building through a corridor that felt narrower than the others, as if the structure itself was guiding them towards something it didn't want to reveal too quickly. Daniel walked beside Adriana, not behind her this time. That detail didn't escape her notice. Outside the reinforced glass windows, the city stretched out in layered motion, traffic flowing, people moving, life continuing without awareness of the hidden machinery above it. Adriana finally broke the silence. "You don't look surprised," she said. Daniel glanced briefly at her. "I've stopped being surprised by how complicated systems can get." "That's not what I meant," she replied. A pause. "You're not intimidated?" Daniel thought about that for a moment. "Should I be?" Adriana didn't answer immediately. That hesitation alone was an answer. They entered a quieter section of the building. No screens. No staff. Just controlled silence. Adriana stopped near a large window overlooking the city. "This company isn't just a business," she said. "It's a structure that affects logistics, pricing, and distribution across regions most people don't even think about." Daniel stood beside her, looking out. "That's why mistakes matter," she continued. "Because they don't stay internal." Daniel nodded slowly. "Nothing ever stays internal." That statement carried weight she didn't miss. A brief silence settled between them. Then Adriana spoke again, but more measured this time. "You understand consequences in a way most people here don't," she said. Daniel gave a faint nod. "Because I've lived through them." She turned slightly toward him. "Explain." He hesitated, not because he didn't know what to say, but because memory had a texture of its own. "My mother needed treatment," he said quietly. "We were told the delay was administrative. Paperwork. Approval chains." He paused. "She didn't survive the delay." Adriana didn't interrupt. Daniel continued, voice steady but lower. "After that, I stopped believing that systems fail randomly." That silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was reflective. A small hospital room. A flickering light overhead. His mother's hand weaker each day. A nurse apologizing repeatedly for delays she didn't control. A stack of forms no one seemed able to prioritize. And Daniel, too young to fix anything, old enough to understand it mattered. Back in the present, Adriana looked away slightly. For the first time, her expression softened, not emotionally, but perceptibly less guarded. "You didn't just notice the pattern in our system," she said. "You recognized the behavior behind it." Daniel nodded once. "Systems don't fail on their own. People either maintain them or manipulate them." That statement lingered. Adriana turned fully toward him now. "There's something else," she said. Daniel waited. "My mother trusts very few people," she continued. "And she brought you here without telling me the full reason." A pause. "That means she already decided something about you." Daniel frowned slightly. "I'm not sure that's a good thing." "It depends," Adriana replied, "on what she decided." She started walking again. Daniel followed. As they moved through the corridor, the tone between them shifted subtly. Less interrogation. More observation. Adriana spoke again, quieter this time. "You know, most people who come into my world try to impress me." Daniel glanced at her. "I'm not most people." A faint pause. "That much is obvious," she replied. They reached a private lift. Before stepping in, Adriana hesitated. Then said something unexpected. "Earlier, when you said I should verify you instead of trusting you." She paused. That wasn't the answer most people give. Daniel stepped into the lift beside her. "Most people want to be believed. I prefer to be understood." The doors closed. The lift descended slowly. Adriana watched the numbers change. "Understanding takes time," she said. Daniel nodded. "So does trust." A pause. "That's why they're not the same thing." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Adriana said quietly, "If what you found is real, then this isn't just internal fraud." Daniel looked at her. "No." She continued, "It means someone has been studying our system long enough to predict it." Daniel nodded. "Yes. And that level of knowledge doesn't come from observation alone," she added. "It comes from proximity," Daniel said. That word changed the atmosphere again. Proximity implied access. Access implied trust. Trust implied betrayal. Adriana exhaled slowly. "We need to know who," she said. Daniel responded without hesitation. "We will." That "we" didn't go unnoticed. The lift doors opened into a quieter level of the building. Adriana stepped out first, then paused. She turned slightly. "Daniel," she said. He looked at her. A bit passed. "You're either the most useful mistake my mother has ever made." A pause. Or. Adriana didn't finish the sentence immediately. The words hung in the air between them as the corridor around them stayed quiet, almost too quiet, like the building itself was waiting for her conclusion. Daniel stood still, not pushing, not interrupting. He had learned something important about moments like this: people reveal more in their pauses than in their statements. Adriana finally continued. "Or the most dangerous variable inside this system." Daniel didn't react sharply. He simply nodded once, as if both outcomes made sense in their own way. "Then treat me like a variable," he said calmly. "Not a conclusion." That answer made her pause again, but this time she didn't respond. Instead, she turned and walked forward. Daniel followed. They arrived at a private section of the building that looked nothing like the rest. No screens. No staff. Just a single reinforced glass room at the end of the corridor, lit softly from within. Inside, Evelyn Carrington was already waiting. She didn't look surprised to see them. In fact, she looked as if she had expected this exact moment. Adriana slowed as she entered. "Mother." Evelyn's gaze shifted briefly to her daughter, then to Daniel. "You saw it," she said simply. Daniel replied, "Yes." Not proud. Not hesitant. Just factual. Evelyn nodded slightly, as if confirming something only she understood. Adriana looked between them. "You already knew he would find it." Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked slowly toward the glass wall overlooking the city. "I didn't know what he would find," she said at last. "I only knew he would see what others ignore." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why me?" That question landed in the room with weight. Evelyn turned halfway toward him. "Because systems don't fail from intelligence," she said. "They fail from indifference." A pause. "And you are not indifferent." Adriana stepped forward slightly. "This still doesn't explain why you brought him here." Evelyn studied her daughter for a moment longer than necessary. Then she said, "Because you needed to see him properly." Adriana frowned. "I've been evaluating him." "No," Evelyn replied softly. "You've been testing him." That distinction shifted something in Adriana's expression. Evelyn continued, "Testing is about resistance. Evaluation is about understanding." A silence followed. Daniel looked between them. "So what am I being evaluated for?" Evelyn turned fully toward him now. "For whether you will break or rebuild what others have already corrupted." Adriana's expression tightened slightly. "And if he fails?" Evelyn didn't look away. "Then nothing changes. The system continues as it is." Daniel nodded slowly. "And if I succeed?" Evelyn's gaze sharpened slightly. "Then you become something people like you were never supposed to become?" That line lingered longer than anything else she had said. Adriana crossed her arms. "Your speaking like this was planned long before yesterday." Evelyn didn't deny it. Instead, she said, "It was not planned for him specifically." A pause. "But it was always going to require someone like him." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Someone who has nothing to protect." Evelyn shook her head slightly. "Someone who has already lost what most people fear losing." That silence hit differently. Because it was true. Adriana looked at Daniel more carefully now, as if seeing him again for the first time. Not as an employee. Not as a test subject. Something less defined. Something more uncertain. Evelyn walked closer to the desk and placed a small file on it. "This is what you uncovered," she said to Daniel. He didn't open it yet. "Internal manipulation across supply layers," she continued. "Subtle enough to avoid alarms. Structured enough to stay hidden." Adriana added, "We traced it further. It doesn't originate inside this building." Daniel finally looked up. "I already suspected that." Evelyn nodded. "Good." A quiet bit passed. Then Daniel asked, "So what happens now?" Evelyn looked at him steadily. "Now," she said, "you choose whether you step away or step deeper." Adriana's gaze sharpened slightly. "Deeper into what exactly?" Evelyn turned toward the city again. "Into the part of this system that does not appear on any report." Silence followed. Not heavy. Final. Daniel looked at the fire. Then at the city beyond the glass. Then back at them. "You're not asking me to help," he said slowly. Evelyn replied, "No." Adriana added quietly, "We are asking if you understand what you've already walked into." Daniel closed the file without opening it further. Then he said something that changed the atmosphere completely. "I understand one thing," he said. Both women looked at him. "If this system is being manipulated," he continued, "then it will keep hurting people who don't even know they are part of it." A pause. "And I've lived that kind of silence before." For the first time, Evelyn's expression softened slightly, not emotionally, but in recognition. Adriana didn't speak. Because she realized something she hadn't admitted yet. Daniel wasn't chasing anything. He was responding to something he had already survived. Evelyn turned slightly. "Then it's decided," she said. Adriana looked at her sharply. "Decided?" Evelyn nodded once. "He stays." "A bit." "Not as an employee," she added. "Not as a guest." Her gaze returned to Daniel. "But as someone who sees what this system has forgotten how to see." Daniel didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply nodded once. "Then I'll start with the truth," he said. Adriana looked at him. "What truth?" she asked. Daniel met her gaze. "Whoever built the distortion didn't just study your system." A pause. "They studied your trust." Silence filled the room. Because for the first time, even Evelyn didn't respond immediately.